As long as you dare to stop the construction, I dare to stop repaying the loan. Don't blame me for being heartless, but you are too rascal. Why did the bank release the loan before the building has finished its construction? Even after you went to a non-custodian account, the building is not yet completed. Where has the money gone? This time, if you don't resume work, we don't repay the loan for 1 day. There is absolutely no compromise.
The waves of people halting payments on mortgages for unfinished buildings has spread to 25 provinces in China. As of July 16th, the number of developments that have been issued a notice of being forced to stop mortgage payments by all homeowners has expanded to 25 provinces and 286 residential projects across China. However, starting on July 16th, the number of stopped mortgages began to stagnate on the Chinese web. Yet, between July 12th and 16th, the number of real estate projects receiving notices of stopped mortgage payments from homeowners rose from 14 to 286. It's suspected that the government has stepped in to control the information, so the numbers we are seeing don't reflect the real situation. By real estate projects, we don't mean one building or one home. Each project usually includes thousands of homes, which means that each project involves the interests of thousands of homeowners. For example, one of the stalled projects in Wuhan by the leading developer Evergrande Group sold more than 5,000 units with a pre-sale capital of about $600 million. According to Chinese media, as of July 12th, there were only 14 stalled projects with 46,000 households involved, worth a total of 34.7 billion RMB, or about $5.14 billion. Based on this information, the 286 projects are likely to involve roughly 940,000 buyers and about $105 billion. This is just a projection and may not be exact. However, the trend indicates that by the time this episode airs, it is likely that the wave of homeowners refusing to pay mortgages in China will have affected over 1 million Chinese people, involving the safety of over $100 billion worth of loan funds. It is no wonder that the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has responded quickly. On July 14th, the China Banking Regulatory Commission responded by working with the construction sector and the Communist Party's central bank to support local governments in their efforts to ensure the delivery of buildings, people's livelihood, and stability. On the same day, more than 10 banks, including 6 major banks, a number of joint stock banks, and city merchant banks issued announcements all saying that the risk of unfinished buildings was controllable. Is this true? Here is an unfinished real estate project in Wuhan. On July 16th, about 50 construction workers came to the site to demonstrate that the construction had resumed. They started by drinking water and eating watermelon at the gate of the construction site while shouting slogans like "Go Go Jiayu." But the next day, on the morning of July 17th, one of the homeowners went back to the site and saw no signs of construction and no workers. The homeowner met with the foreman. According to the foreman, construction workers haven't received wages for almost 3 months. This property is known as the most educated property in Wuhan. There are more than 2,400 homeowners in this development, over 1,400 of whom have university degrees or above, accounting for nearly 60% of homeowners. I am a property owner of Wuhan Greenland Guanggu Xinghe, graduated from Wuhan University with a master's degree. I am an owner studying in Wuhan University. I am a master's graduate from Harbin Engineering University. My wife graduated from Nanjing Aerospace University with a master's degree. We are both recent graduates of the university.
I'm a homeowner. My husband and I both graduated from Tsinghua University with a master's degree, now working in Shenzhen. Our original plan was to get settled in Wuhan, but last August, we heard the news that the construction site was shut down. We become very anxious, not knowing whether we're going back to Wuhan in the future. We're now reconsidering our career planning and life direction.
Wu Tian, a homeowner working in Shanghai, told the media that he had taken time off work several times to go to Wuhan to defend his rights after the construction of the property stopped, and the process was torturous. He said that stopping the mortgage payment will put him on the credit blacklist and he may face the consequences of a low spending limit, an air or high-speed rail travel ban, and even his children's schooling could be put in jeopardy. But I can't help it, I can't keep paying a mortgage for nothing for 30 years. I had to divorce my wife first and put the children under her name before starting not paying the mortgage. Under the CCP's direction, various property developers might feign temporary resumption of work so as to stall for time. But we know that developers have broken their capital chains, leaving their developments unfinished, and such financial holes are virtually impossible to repair. In the last episode, we presented the most important link in China's real estate pyramid scheme, the pre-sale system. In 1994, under former Communist Party leader Jiang Zemin, the government issued the pre-sale policy. It allows developers or builders to use uncompleted buildings as collateral to borrow money during the pre-sale stage. For example, homeowners usually pay a 30% down payment and borrow 70% from the bank via a mortgage. It's considered a one-time payment for the purchase of the property after the bank transfers the loan to the developer. Basically, home buyers hand over millions of RMB in down payments and bank loans without seeing the real thing. That is to say, the developers use the buyer's money to build the homes, but when the capital chain breaks, the money is spent and the home is gone. This was on July 14th in Shanxi province. The banking and insurance bureau was surrounded by thousands of homeowners in protest, shouting illegal lending. A large number of public security guards were on the scene. Online information shows that Xi'an is one of the hardest hit areas in terms of uncompleted buildings, with unofficial statistics indicating more than 70 projects are impacted. China has regulatory requirements for down payments and loans for homebuyers under the pre-sale system. However, these requirements are so vague that local governments and the financial system can interpret them according to their own needs, which ultimately means they aren't enforced in reality. Banks, government departments, and developers have joined together to easily dictate homebuyers' down payment and loan funds. In several of the notices of being forced to stop mortgage payments, homeowners have claimed that during the pre-sale of the homes, various banks committed different degrees of irregularities in issuing loans and failed to meet their duties of supervising the funds. This is the owner of a stalled building in the city of Zhengzhou, Henan province, inquiring with the bank president about the deficit of funds in the supervisory account. There is a strict protocol for the use and allocation of regulatory funds, plus a method promulgated by the Zhengzhou Housing Authority. In addition, there is a detailed description of how to operate, exactly in accordance with these two guidelines. I won't discuss the details because you won't remember even if I tell you. You can check it later yourself. The last step, I tell you, releasing the regulatory funds requires approval from the Fund Supervision Section or the Department of Fund Supervision of Zhengzhou Housing Authority. They have to approve the release of funds and produce the documentation with stamps before we, as a regulatory bank, can release the money. In other words, we take orders. This is evident, right? If they don't allow it, we can't touch the money. As a supervisory bank, we don't have the right to use money at will. This is simple logic. What you're saying is that you follow the instructions to hand over the money. Yes, we ensure that each transfer is approved by the Zhengzhou Housing Authority. Without their approval, it would be illegal and criminal for us to transfer money. The bank president emphasized that the disbursement of regulatory funds must have the permission of the Fund Supervision Section of the City Housing Authority. What he meant was that the regulatory funds placed in the bank had been misappropriated and were now in the red, the responsibility of which lies with the housing authority of the city government. In other words, the government and the bank conspired to spend the homebuyer's money in advance. In the last episode, an audience member asked, "Why are Chinese people so stupid to put a down payment and a loan on a home that is on a drawing board? Why not buy an existing home?" In the midst of China's rapid urbanization, the supply of second homes is extremely low. Almost all of the low-rise residential buildings in the cities have been knocked down and rebuilt. Developers are usually able to sell all of their homes at the pre-sale stage, and there is little chance for people to find a suitable home in a well-built development. Both the government and the developers don't need to invest in advance, but rather raid the savings of generations of ordinary Chinese people and spend them in advance. It has created what appears to be an extremely prosperous real estate economy in China for more than 3 decades. The housing prices in first-tier cities such as Beijing and Shanghai are listed among the most expensive globally, and the ratio of housing prices to residents' incomes is much higher than in the world's major cities such as New York, Paris, Tokyo, and London, revealing a large real estate bubble in China. According to the China Economic Briefing by the World Bank that was released in June, by the end of 2021, China's real estate investment accounted for 13% of the country's GDP, compared to just 5% in OECD countries. Moreover, when supply chain inputs were considered, the real estate sector accounted for about 30% of China's GDP. Looking back today, the 3 decades of real estate development in China haven't brought significant wealth to the society, but rather accumulated a horrendous amount of debt. According to a 2021 survey, the proportion of local governments relying on land finance is as high as 78.4%, with 12 provinces above the average and 5 provinces with over 100% reliance on land finance. In the past, local governments benefited from the pre-sale system and were reluctant to abolish it, but now they dare not. In order to curb the property bubble, in August 2021, the Xi Jinping government introduced the 3 Red Lines policy to monitor the safety of bank capital. The legislation rapidly cooled down the real estate sector, leading to a tight capital crunch for most builders. Under such circumstances, the abolition of the pre-sale system would significantly increase the capital pressure on developers in the short term, causing more to go bankrupt sooner and more stalled buildings to appear. According to statistics released by the Chinese government, as of the end of 2021, the total floor area of undelivered unfinished projects in 24 major cities that are being monitored accounted for 10% of the total residential transactions in 2021. Developers currently halting construction aren't small developers with weak strength, but the leading companies such as Evergrande Group. With these top players failing, the confidence of the Chinese public in buying homes has taken a huge hit. According to figures released by China's National Bureau of Statistics, the real estate sales index has dropped from 11 consecutive months year-on-year up to May. Housing market transactions in major cities fell by more than 40% year-on-year in both April and May of 2022. The volume of new home transactions fell by nearly 60%. In order to boost the real estate industry, more than 300 measures by local governments have been issued across China, including bizarre deals such as wheat for homes and garlic for homes. On June 21, 2022, the story, Wheat and Garlic for the Down Payment in 2 counties in Henan province, went viral on Chinese social media Weibo. Real estate developers advertised 30 US cents per 500 grams wheat for home and 74 US cents per 500 grams garlic for home, up to $24,000 US in mortgage payments. On June 28, the Nanjing-based leading developer New City Holdings launched a campaign targeting watermelon growers, offering watermelon for a home up to $15,000 US. Growers are offered $1.5 US for 500 grams of watermelon to offset the purchase price of a new home. The real estate industry, which has been slow to pick up steam, has made the CCP anxious that a new term has been coined: malicious non-buyers. On June 17, 2022, the Qingdao municipal government in Shandong province issued an official document stating, "Anyone who maliciously doesn't buy a home and is found to have a large deposit in the bank will be warned and talked to." In other words, if people are found to have a large savings in their bank accounts but don't buy homes, they will be subject to an interview and conversation by the government. Since June, nearly 10 cities have issued policies urging government employees en masse to take the lead in buying real estate. Of course, civil servants who are party members aren't easily persuaded. One report reads, "As a group of people with stable and good incomes in these cities, their home ownership needs have been met years ago, and they have no new demands for home ownership. At this time, if one still responds to the call of the work unit and buys a new home, one is only making trouble for him or herself. What's more, people who are government employees are also scared of the unfinished buildings. China's huge real estate bubble will burst sooner or later. The sudden emergence and rapid spread of the trend of Chinese homebuyers refusing to pay mortgages on uncompleted properties should be a clear signal. In China, there has never been a massive non-payment problem before, as the red system is so strict that people don't dare to take offense and almost never resort to protests unless they have been forced to the point where they can no longer survive. The undelivered and unfinished buildings have cleared out the wealth of these victims, who not only don't get their homes but also end up with huge debts. The so-called middle class has been turned directly into the proletariat, a class of nothing or even worse, a class that's ridden with debt. At this point, being on the credit blacklist doesn't seem so scary anymore.
I
am an owner of a new building in the south third ring of Zhengzhou City. I bought my home in 2018. When I bought it, my daughter was only 7 months old. Now my daughter is 4.5 years old. I haven't lived in my home yet. I have already paid the mortgage for 30 months. Our contract delivery time was supposed to be at the end of June 2021. It has been 1 year and 12 days since the developer defaulted on the delivery. In total, the number of households in this residential project is more than 8,600. We have chosen to stop the mortgage collectively in April this year, and the number of people who have stopped the mortgage is increasing. We are paying monthly mortgage payments and we are renting a place, which I believe many homebuyers cannot afford. Today you pretend to resume work. Many homeowners won't accept this. Our principle is that we won't pay a penny of the mortgage until the home is delivered. I am not a typical rascal either. I am forced to be where I am today. Let's examine this incident in a broader context. In the first half of 2022, China was affected by the outbreak of COVID-19 and the downturn in the land market, which hit government fiscal revenues quite hard. It is foreseeable that the spread of the trend of refusing to pay mortgages will not only impact China's real estate, but also affect the stability of China's banking system. Prior to this incident, the protests of depositors of Henan village banks demonstrated the black hole of China's finance. There is no doubt that this wave of stopping mortgage payments will further impact the liquidity of real estate companies, which will lead to a rise in bad debts of banks and the risk of failure of numerous small and medium-sized banks, resulting in a crisis in the financial system. On the other hand, the emergence of a large number of uncompleted properties appears to be a real estate problem, but at its root, it's related to the backlog of bad debts of banks as well. The Communist Party's powerful and wealthy and their white gloves have hollowed out state-owned assets and turned them into family wealth. Not only have they obtained loans directly in China, but they have also registered many affiliated enterprises outside of China which are guaranteed by domestic banks. Chinese banks have granted loans to these enterprises outside of China, thus moving large amounts of capital overseas, yet the risk is borne completely by these banks. These bad debts are like a bottomless pit, and somebody has to fill them. Now we see that the first ones to fill the hole are the average Chinese people, the depositors who can't get their savings back, and the homeowners of unfinished buildings. It is dark, ready for bed. What a great parcel of land. I bought this place more than 3 years ago, and now it's in shambles. Real estate is tied up with banks and other financial institutions, sounding the deafening alarm that a huge storm is coming to China's economy. We'll be following closely to see which group the domino effect will impact next.